Hello, in this video I'm gonna try to wrap up the construction system so that we could finally start with unit training and battle system. Now let's go to the server project, and here in the place building async. So this server building contains a bunch of required resources, and before that we get the time that requires to construct this building. But here this condition is not very good because some buildings have the time equals to 0, like wall, and we want to build them instantly. So to do that, instead of checking to see if the time is greater than 0, I'm gonna create a boolean up here, and I'm gonna name it have buildings, and I'm gonna set the value to true if we have a record in our database for that building. And now instead of checking to see if time is greater than 0, we're gonna check if we have building or not. And now down here we're gonna check to see if the time is greater than 0 or not. If it is greater than 0, then this is gonna be our query. Let me just cut this and paste it inside this if condition. And if our time equals to 0, in that case we need to write another query. So I'm just gonna paste the query one more time, and we are going to make some changes on this. So the first change we're going to do is for a level and is constructing. Here, as you can see in the parameters, we're setting the level to 0, but here we're gonna set it to 1, and is constructing has been set to 1, but we're gonna set it to 0. And we're not gonna include this construction time and construction build time in our insert statement. So I'm just gonna remove those, and of course I'm gonna remove the values for them as well, and this as well. Now we want to give our players an option to instantly finish the construction by consuming gems. So to do that, let's go back to the client project, and here I'm gonna add another button to the options. Let's enable this, and here I'm gonna duplicate this button, and for now let's just name it instant. And let's just change the name to instant for now. Now let's go to the options here in the UI building options script. I'm gonna open that up, and I am going to add the break transform and button for our new game object here. Let's name it instant, and the same thing for the button. I'm just gonna copy this, and this is going to be instant button. And now whenever our status is going to be set to true, we're gonna copy this and paste it here, our instant panel, and let's also change this to upgrade panel. The game object of our instant panel is going to be set active if our construction is true. So if we are constructing a building, we want to show this instant panel to allow the player to finish the building immediately, but for the cost of some gems. Now let's go to the camera controller and assign the click event. Here it is on screen collect. I'm gonna add another else, and this is going to be instant button. And in this case, we're gonna send a message to the server. So let's go to the player and create the package ID for it. I'm just gonna name it instant build, and let's go back to the camera controller, change the ID to instant build, and we are going to pass the ID of the selected building, and we're gonna send the package. So now let's go back to the Unity editor. And here I'm gonna assign both the panel and the button of our instant button. So let me hide that. Here we go. And let's go to the server and receive that packet here in the terminal. Actually, let's bring the ID here as well. This is in the player. I'm just gonna copy that I'm gonna go back to the server and paste it. So here, when we are receiving a packet, let's get down here and copy that, paste it, and this is going to be instant build. We're gonna get the database ID of that building and we're gonna call some function. So let's go and create that function. I'm just gonna copy the value of these two. Here we go. And let's paste it here. So let's go up. This is going to be instant build. And this is going to be instant build async. Now in the terminal, we're going to call this instant build. And let's go to the data and create a function on how much gems it's going to cost to instantly build that building. So to do that, I'm just gonna create a function for it. So let's say public static, it's gonna be an integer, which is the amount of gems. And I'm gonna name it get instant build required gems, and it's gonna take an integer called remained seconds. So let's create an integer, call it gems equals to 0, and at the end of this function we're just gonna return the gems. Now here we're gonna check to see if our remained seconds is greater than 0. If it is, we're gonna check another condition to see if our remained gems is less or equals than 60 seconds. So that's one condition. The second condition is going to be else if our remained seconds is less or equal than 3600 seconds, which is going to be an hour. And I'm just gonna copy that and paste it here one more time. And in this case, it's gonna be 86,400, and finally just else. So in the first case, the gems is gonna be just 1. In the second case, gems equals to something. It's gonna be 0.00537 f multiplied by something, and that something is going to be remained seconds minus 60 f, and let's also cast this to float. And at the end, I'm gonna add 1 to it. And I'm just gonna cast this as an integer, so it's automatically going to be rounded. And let me copy this value for this one and this one. Of course, I searched the formula on the internet, so you could write down your own formula. It's up to you, but this is the standard. So for this one, it's gonna be 266, and this is going to be 20, and this is going to be 3600, and for the last one it's 143, and this is going to be 86,400, and this is going to be 260. So using this, we're gonna get the instant build required gems. Let's go back to the database. So in this instant build, first we're gonna get the account ID, then we're gonna get the building details, and if the building is not equals to null, we are going to call instant build async. So now let's go to the instant build async. Here I'm gonna just create a variable called time. The other ones we're just gonna remove those. And now we're gonna select something from buildings, actually, not the server buildings, where ID equals to something and account ID equals to something else. So the first one is going to be building ID, and the second one is going to be account ID. And now let's go to the database here in the buildings. So in the structure, as you can see, we have two variables. One of them is constructing. Let me actually copy this. So I'm gonna add another condition here and say and is a construction greater than 0. So if the building is constructing, only then get those values for me. And what values we need? The first value, it is the construction time. So that's 1. So let me paste it here. And the second value is going to be now. And we're gonna get it as now time. So now let's get those values. The first one is going to be a date time, and let's name it target time. It's gonna be a date time dot parse, and it's gonna be construction time. Let me copy and paste it here. Just gonna remove this extra stuff, and let me copy that, paste it here, and this is going to be now, and let's copy that, paste it here. So let's check if target is greater than now. In that case, time equals to target minus now, and let's put it in the parentheses and say dot total seconds, and I'm just gonna cast it as an integer. Now we got a time that is actually the remaining time for this building to be constructed. So let's get here. So the first thing we're gonna check to see if time is greater than 0 or not. So if it is, let's create another condition. Let's actually just copy this and paste it here. I'm just gonna make another condition out of that and remove the rest of this condition, and here I'm just gonna create an integer saying required gems, and it's gonna be data dot get instant build required gems, and I'm gonna pass the time. So here I'm gonna call spend resources for the required goal. I'm gonna pass 0, this is 0, this is 0, and this is gonna be required gems. So if I spend that, then I'm gonna run the query. Let me cut that. And of course we could add an else here and saying that you don't have enough gems, but let's leave it for now. I'm just gonna create this function. It's gonna say update buildings, set is construction to 0. Well, actually we are doing something similar. Let's check this out. Here in the general update, I think. Yes, here it is. I'm just gonna copy this query and let me collapse that and bring that query here. So we're saying update buildings, add a level to it because we instantly build it, and set the is constructing to 0 where building ID, which is just going to be ID equals to this, and this is going to be parameter with index 0, which is our building ID. And we're gonna execute that, and there is a value called ID. Let me see, here it is. By default it's 0. Well, let's say when you instantly build the building, it's gonna be 1, and let me just copy that. If you don't have resources, it's gonna be 2, and when it's 0, then nothing happened. So that's that. Let me collapse this and go back here, and let's just rename this to response, and we're gonna set the ID to instant build, and let's go and handle the received response here in the player, I think. Yes, in the client. Let's get down here, and I'm just gonna copy that, paste it here. This is going to be instant build. The response is going to be that. Well, actually let's create a long for it up here, or an integer, and let's name it response. Well, let's make it an integer, And let's go back to the server and change the type to the integer as well. Here in the instant building, I'm just saying integer. This is also going to be an integer, and here let's see, it is going to be an integer. I think it would be better to change it for the update building async as well. So I'm gonna change that one to integer as well. Here it is an integer. The same thing here. And let's go to the upgrade building. This is also going to be an integer. So let's collapse everything. And let's go back to the player script and the client. So let's get down here. I'm just gonna remove that. Let's get further down. This is going to be response. And the same thing here. This is going to be response as well. Let's copy that, paste it here, and this is going to be read integer. The same thing here. So we're gonna say if we are instant building, if it is equals to 0, nothing happened. Else if it is 1, then instant build successful. Otherwise you don't have resources. Well, actually, let's say if x equals to 2, and let me cut that, paste it here. Actually, let's bring it back. This is gonna be not enough resources. Now we need to add the builders hot. So let's go to the server buildings and create a new building. I'm just gonna hit insert. And the ID for this is going to be builders hot, and let's say for the level 1. And exceptionally for this builders hot, we're gonna set the resources, the required resources in the code. And here in the columns count, let's say 2, rows 2, capacity and speed and other stuff, let's just leave them as default. I'm gonna hit go. So here it is in the server buildings. Now we have a builders hot, and let's go to the server script here in the database. Let's go up here in the place building async. Well, actually here in the place building, let me expand that. Let's see, here we go. So here, just before we start placing the building, I'm gonna check to see if our building dot id equals to builders hot, and in this case I'm gonna set the required gems for it. But to do that, I need to get how many builders hub I have. So let's create a function for it. I'm just gonna say private static integer. I'm gonna say get builders count, and I'm gonna pass an account ID, and of course MySQL connection. So int count equals to 0, and at the end I'm just gonna return this count. So let's find the select statement. Here it is. I'm just gonna copy that and let's paste it here. This is gonna be select ID from buildings, where global ID equals to that, and let's say account ID equals to this. Well, let's actually bring the account ID to the first parameter check. So let's say where account ID equals to that and global ID equals to this, and it is in a string, so we need to add those parameters. So the first one is going to be account ID, and the second parameter is going to be builders hot. And here for every row that we find, I'm gonna say count plus plus, add one number to our count. So just like that, we're gonna get our builders count. So let's go back to the place building. Here it is. When we have an ID of builders hot, we could even make this more generic. Let's actually do that here in the get builders count. Let's say get building count. So let's say get building, and we add another parameter, let's say a string, and this is going to be global ID. And instead of this builders hot, I'm just gonna say global ID. Let me save this. Let's go back, and here I'm gonna say int c equals to get building count. I'm gonna pass the account ID, and I'm gonna pass builders hot, and I'm also going to pass the connection, and that is going to get us the buildings count. Well, actually we don't have a connection here, so to take care of that, let's actually just cut everything. Just gonna cut that and bring it inside our place building async. Let's find it. Here it is. So the first thing I'm gonna check in our connection, let's just do that. I'm gonna paste that here, and of course this account ID should be a long, so let's get up here, and instead of saying int account ID, saying long account ID. Let's go back here. If our building is builders hot, then we need to change the price of that. So I'm gonna create a switch statement. Let's say switch C. For the default, I'm just gonna say building dot quiet gems equals to 99999 whatever. But for other cases, let's say case 0, we're gonna say, let me just copy that and paste it here, and after that I'm gonna use a break. So this is going to be 0 for the case of one builder. If you already have one builder, then the next one is gonna cost 250 gems. If you have, let's say, 2 builders, then it's gonna cost you 500. If you have 3 and 4, let's say 3 and 4, it's gonna cost you 1000, and the next one 2000. And let's make this in line. So if you want to add more builders, you can add those here, and that is going to construct our builders hot. So now we need to check if we can construct building if we have enough builders. So to do that, let's actually create another function like this get buildings count. Just gonna copy that, paste it here, and let's say get building construction count. And I'm gonna remove this global ID, we don't need that. So instead of saying global ID equals to that, let me just remove the global ID part. I'm gonna say is constructing is greater than 0. So it's gonna get the count of all the buildings that are currently being constructed, and this is gonna be index 0, and let's not forget to fix that for this one as well. This is gonna be 0, this is gonna be 1. So let's go back to the place building async, and let's actually return an integer instead of a long, and the same thing here, and of course here. So let's see where this ID is being set. Let's say when you have a successful building placement, you're gonna change the ID to 1, and if you don't have enough resources, let's actually set it to something else. Let me just copy and paste that, and let's copy this condition. I'm gonna bring it down here. Let's paste that, and that's it. Here it is going to be spend resources, and that one is going to be have building. So this is going to be ID equals to, let's say, 3, which means we didn't found any building for it. and I'm just gonna cut all of this. So basically every ID means something, and here I'm gonna add an else for this. Let's say ID equals to 2 means you don't have enough resources, and at the end we're just gonna return that ID. Let's actually rename this to response, and I'm gonna apply that. All the references of this ID change to response. Let's go up here in the place building, I think. Yes, here it is. So we're just gonna change it to integer, and here we're just gonna simply say write response. Let's name it response, and I'm gonna copy that, paste it here, and can place building is going to be the ID of 4. So let's say if it's 4, you cannot place the building. Let's go back to the client and set those values. Here in the packet received, if the ID is build, we're gonna check these values. Let me copy and paste them. We had 4 different index. Let's paste them here for the index of 3 and 4. 2, it was no resources, so let me copy that, paste it here. For 4, it was place taken. For 3, let's see, what was it for 3? It's max level for 3, so let's say max level, and for 0, let's say unknown. Of course, we need to handle these messages later, but for now we're just gonna leave it at a debug.log. Now let's go back to the place building async. Here it is, and we need to add another index, which is going to be index 5, and we're gonna do that before we spend the resources. Yeah, let's get here, and the first thing we're gonna check if time is greater than 0. I know that we already checked the time, but we need to check it here as well. But before we do that, let's get to integers. Let's say builders count equals to get building count. So the first parameter is going to be an account ID, the second one is going to be builders hot, and the other one is going to be the connection. So that's one integer. We need to get another integer, and this is going to be constructing count. It's gonna be get building construction count. We're gonna pass the account ID and connection. And here we check if time is greater than 0. It means that this building needs time to be constructed. And if it needs time, then it means it needs a builder. And we're gonna say and builders count is less than construction count. Well, actually less than or equal than construction count. It means we don't have enough builders, so let's add an else statement here, and in this case response equals to 5, and in the other case we're just gonna, let me cut everything and paste it inside this else. And here on the player side we're gonna add another case, and let's say in the case of 5 there is no builders. So let's go back and give the player at least one builder by default. Let's go to the authenticate player async, and here I'm just gonna insert an builder for this, copy and paste it, insert into buildings, and let's say builders hot, and I'm gonna place it on 10 10. So that takes care of that. We also need to check to see if we have enough builders in the building upgrade. So let's go to the upgrade building async, and we're gonna do a similar thing. Well, let's actually copy it from place building async. Here we go. I'm just gonna copy this part. So let's bring it down here. Just before we're gonna spend our resources, let's paste it and say else. So here we go. Well, let's actually make the same condition. Just gonna copy that, paste it here. This is gonna be the spend resources condition, and this is gonna be have level condition. I'm gonna make them two different conditions. I'm gonna give a else to both of them, the else for this one as well, and I'm gonna cut this, bring it here inside the spend resources, and I'm going to cut that, bring it up here, paste it, and let's cut this one more time, bring it here in the else. So that should take care of that. So let's check this out. This is gonna return an integer. By default it's 0. Let's actually rename it to response. So response by default is 0. At the end we're gonna return this response. So if response equals to 1, then it was successful. If response equals to 2, you don't have enough resources. If response equals to 3, then the max level is reached. And if it's 5, you don't have enough builders. So let's go back to the client, and here in the upgrade, we can just do a similar switch. Let me just copy this from our build. Copy and paste it here in the upgrade. And paste it here. And this is gonna be upgrade started. And we don't have an index of 4 because the building already has a place. And that's it, I think. Let me save the server and let's go up here in the upgrade building. Yes, everything works fine. Let me just rename this to response. The same thing here. And let's go back to the client, check this out. Yep, everything seems to be okay. Let's start the server. Well, actually, before we start the server, I'm just gonna create a building. Let's say bring this gold storage or any other building you want. And here I'm just gonna say builder's hut. And let's go and create an ID for it. Here we go in the data.building ID, so it should be in the data. I'm just gonna say builders hut, and let's assign the value. Here it is. It's gonna be builders hut. Rows and columns, let's say 2, and the base area, let's say 2 by 2. And I'm just gonna change the size of my cube, scale it like this. So let's say this is my builder's hub off. This is a collider. Let me remove that. And I'm gonna make a prefab out of this builder's hub. And let me just delete that. And then we're going to go to canvas. Here in the main, we're gonna add the builder's hub prefab to our buildings prefab. And let me just save the scene. And now here in the shop, we could also create an option to place a builder's hub. Here in the buildings, viewport content. Let me open this a little and let me duplicate this. This is going to be builder's hut. And let me rename this to builder's hut. The same thing for the text. And that should take care of that for us. Let me disable this and save it. Hopefully we don't have any errors. Let's play the server. And now let's play the client. Here we go. I am just going to place a builder's hot. Well, this is not working the way it's supposed to, but here it is. A portion of it is available. I'm just gonna place that. The first one is free, of course. It's just gonna place it for no cost. But before we continue, let me actually go back to the canvas. Here in the shop and my elements, and here on the content I am going to set the horizontal to preferred size, and let me save this, disable the elements, and check out to see if the result is any different. So here in the shop, yep, I can move my slider around the proper way now. So I'm gonna place another builder's hot. This time it should have cost 250. Yes, I have 250 gems left. Let's create another one. So when I try to place this, we have a problem here. It shouldn't have placed that one. So let's take a look. Well, actually, let's see if we can place another one. Well, this time it says no resources. So let me stop this, stop the server, and let's go to the place buildings async. Well, it doesn't make any sense. We are setting this to 500. I'm gonna look into that and find any problem if there is any. So let's go back here to the authenticate player async actually while we are here. So if you take a look, we are setting a bunch of default buildings for the player, and amongst these buildings we have gold storage and elixir storage. I would like to add another parameter to these two buildings, the storage. So let's do that, storage for that one and storage for this one. And this is going to be the last parameter. So let's say index of 4 here and the index of 4 here as well. This way you can have a default value for your resources storage. So for now, let's say 10,000 for this one and 10,000 for that one. Now to check out everything, let me first start the server, and now I'm gonna go to my database. Here in the buildings, I'm just going to delete all the buildings and also go to accounts and delete this account as well. So let me play the game. Here we go. I have a builder by default, I have my other buildings, and I have a 10,000 value for my resources. Of course, I need to adjust the capacity of my storage buildings with my initial storage capacity, but that's something we can do later. So now we need to check our instant build option that we created before to see if everything works fine. For example, this building, I just placed it. I'm going to click on it. There is an instant build. Let's click on that, and it got instantly built, and 1 gem was consumed for this. So as you can see, everything works just fine. And pretty much this is everything about buildings and how to place them and how to upgrade them. Of course, we need to add the proper records in the server buildings for all the levels here. And of course, we need to create a function to limit the number of any building that we could place based on our town hall level. So I was hoping to do all of that in this video, but apparently there is no time. I'm probably gonna do it in the next video. So let me close the client and fix a few little problems. Let's go to the server. I'm gonna stop this. So here in the database, the problem with the builders is coming from this get buildings count, and it's because of this. I need to put this inside another while condition. Let me copy one from here. So I'm just gonna say while reader is reading, and I'm gonna cut this, paste it inside here. Then it's gonna add the count. So this way it's gonna return the proper number for buildings count. I think here in the get building construction count we need to do the same thing. I'm just gonna paste that, and that should take care of the job. So let's start this and let's do a final test. Whenever we place a building, well, it start placing it. We have two builders, so we can build two buildings simultaneously. Let's place a cold storage, and now let's place another building, and this time it says no builder, so that's actually working properly. So I'm gonna instant build that one and place another one. Now we can build two buildings simultaneously, and let's place a builder's hut. But I don't think we could because we don't have enough resources. So yeah, everything now works fine, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.